Hello, thanks for joining us. This is going to be a playthrough of the Monument of Skulls scenario for the Thinning Veil, which I'll be playing solo. In solo mode, you can see that I've already set up my Berserker as I ordinarily would. So all of my attributes here have got their cubes set up. So we've got 4 in faith corresponding here with the number on the hero card. We've got 5 will, we've got 6 metal, we've got 6 might, and we've got 8 health. Frequently during the game, you'll be called upon to test against these various attributes. You might take damage against these various attributes, and obviously, should you run out of health, you'll be incapacitated. You'll go into twilight. The sprig of acacia that you have in solo mode is different from when you are playing with other heroes, and this means that you will automatically return from twilight when you burn the sprig of acacia. With a full resurrection, all of your attributes get reset. So the Berserker begins play with the red mist, and I've selected Mighty Blow as a second ability to unlock from his skill cards, of which he has 12. When you're playing the game, you are rolling these custom dice to generate your activation cubes that you use throughout a round. They all have numerous uses in play. The ones that you are most likely to get the best use out of are obviously combats and interacts. However, the Triskelion results are class results, and they often trigger effects from cards. And some skills, the Triskelion allows them to be successes. Generally speaking, when you're making tests or you're attacking people, the enemies in the game, you need to get combat results on the dice, which look like this. And I'll be exploring this dungeon, and you have a random tile draw system, often with target tiles that are filtered into the stack, which will trigger events in the game. Now, this is a fairly basic scenario to show people how to play the game, and so when you hit those tiles, when you draw those tiles out and you place them into play, the triggers are you're looking for a lever here which will open up a door, or you're looking for the tile with the door, which will be your exit from level 1 of the dungeon and level 2 of the dungeon. And then after you exit level 2 of the dungeon, you reach a sort of a boss fight that takes place in a graveyard. And I think I will explain parts of the game as we go through, but it's more of a playthrough than a tutorial. Hopefully you'll pick up many of the elements of the game as we play through. So I'm just going to read the scenario text for the Monument of Skulls. Rumours of the rising of an ancient death cult, which once was a thorn in the side of the druids across Innisfail, are proving true. Word comes to you that some unhinged lawmaster has unearthed a long-lost tome detailing the rites of the bone dance, and has become lost to entities from the other side of midnight while dabbling in the occult. This story is whispered in many places, and you have tracked word of the cult on your journeys, and believe this fledgling necromancer is gathering followers. In Fade Kel Dunwaith, they speak of a street preacher with the serpent tongue, seducing the old and young with promises of immortality, and of crossing over to be reunited with their loved ones who have passed from the circles of the world. In Cruachan, enforcers talk of raids on holy places and temples, with reports of thefts coming in from noble houses, and even a theft from the library of the High King. The trail of the cult leads you to an ancient ruin atop the moors of Dunbly, far from the bustling streets of any city. The cold winds sweep across the long grasses. As you close on a battlefield from long ago, you recognise it as the perfect site to begin a ritual of summoning, forcing the remnants of warriors from the past to rise from their graves to fight once again. At length you discover the ruin, its stone doors long since collapsed. The darkness within beckons. So we have a round tracker dice, which is just out of shot. But that is currently on 1. And I'm going to venture into the dungeon. So this is the Berserker just on the entry tile. And as the text said, it's in darkness, which means I'm going to be looking for a light source Otherwise, every time that I'm attacking things, all of my successes in combat would need to be re-rolled, and only subsequent hits would count towards damaging my targets, which obviously is greatly inhibitive to your combat potential in the game. So you're looking for either a torch or you're looking for a candle lantern, something like that, to give you a bit more of an advantage against any enemies that you might come across in these ruins as you try to interrupt and hopefully thwart the Death Cult in their plans, as they are constructing a monument of skulls in the graveyard where all of these dead warriors are. So I roll my dice for the start of the round, where I'm looking to generate all of my activation cubes that I'll be using. And I've rolled 4 interacts and 2 combat results. Now, if there were more players, I would then pass the dice around, would all generate out cubes. But this is a solo playthrough, so obviously I won't be doing that. And I'm going to start out by using an interact to search the zone that I'm in. In most scenarios, you can search any zone for treasure. You need 2 successes on a hand of dice, which is a game term meaning 6 dice. Often tests against a hand of dice will simply be, so it will say in the text something like test 3, and often that would be an agility test or something like that. Could be to avoid a trap, could be to like to stop yourself from falling into a pit trap, or maybe there's yourself some blade trap, and so you'll need to roll the dice to try and save yourself from these kinds of situations. Other times, the tests that you'll be rolling against will be keyed to one of your attributes. So it could be a faith test or a metal test. But when you're searching, you just roll a hand of dice and you're looking for 2 successes. Okay, so I've got 2 successes here. I've also rolled 3 enemy results, which is quite nasty, but not when you're just making a search of a zone. So I'll put a search token in. Now, everything that I'm using tokens wise is representative, and often it's frankly nicked from other games at the moment, because our tokens haven't arrived from China yet. So the dashboard's ours, the tiles ours, and everything else that you see is just a proxy, which I'm using to demonstrate the game. So I've put in a search token. Ours does have an eye on it, but that one there I believe is from an expansion to Dark Souls. Anyway, so we'll draw a treasure card and see what we've got. Okay, so I've picked up a tarnished shield. Now I can choose when to use the shield, or when not to. If I use the shield, then I can take 1 off of damage that's coming in, but if the attack includes any enemy results, then they'll break that shield, and I'll have to discard it. But for now, that gives me a little bit of extra protection, and that cost me 1 interact to search for that, and I've put that in to show that the zone is now searched, which means I can't search this zone again, so it's not just limitless searches on a zone. I'm now going to spend another interact, and I'm going to step forward into the dungeon. So then I pick up my stack of tiles, and I'll give them a little bit of a shuffle under the table, and we'll see what I draw. Okay, so my first tile that I've drawn is a T-junction, which I can connect like that, or I could connect it like this, or I could connect it like this. I'm going to choose to connect it like that, which will enable me to go left or right off of this tile. I've got to put my berserker in there, and then what I do is I roll 2 dice. Now, if there were 2 players, we would roll 2 dice, and we'd have to take whatever we've got. But in solo, you get to roll the 2 dice, but you can re-roll 1 if you don't like the result. So I've got an enemy result and a combat result. Now, the enemy result means I've got to put a cultist in here. So I've just walked straight into one of the death cult that are behind all of this. The combat result is going to be a random enemy. So we're definitely going to keep the random enemy. We'll see what that is. And that is a shambling corpse. So we put a shambling corpse in there. I'm going to re-roll the cultist result and hope to get something slightly less nasty straight off the bat. But I've re-rolled it and I've got another cultist result. So we've got 2 enemies in there, which is going to be quite dangerous. I'm going to make another search of the zone, which you can do even with enemies about. And there are the 2 successes I need. So I can put in another search token, draw another treasure card. And in this one, I've got a potion of healing. Now, the potion of healing, I can spend any dice at all to drink a potion, or I could administer it to another hero in a multiplayer game at the cost of an interact. That means that I've now got, when I roll this, I get a hand of dice +1, and that's +1 success. So I would average about 3 health returned on that potion if I do well. Obviously, you could end up with just the 1, because it does add 1 to your successes. So you can never get a potion of healing that does nothing, but you can still be disappointed. Now, I'm going to... I would normally think about outrunning these guys, because they're going to be pretty brutal when the fighting starts. But I think that in this instance, I'm going to have to do a little bit of fighting and hope for the best. It's a tricky decision to make, because that other interact will be pretty useful for searching next turn. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to bank that interact. Now, out of all of your activation cubes, you can bank up to 4 at any one time, and it means when you go into the next round, you'll be rolling less dice for your activation cubes, but you can count on some results. So I'm keeping that, because next round I might scurry off into one of these other zones, and I'll know that I'll be able to search that zone for treasure. And it still means I can make my combat attacks now. So I'm going to make my attacks, and I think I'm going to attack the cultist, because he is slightly the more dangerous of these two enemies. But as I said before, I am in darkness, so this is going to be quite difficult. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Red Mist. And Red Mist has got a number in the bottom right. In our version of these cards, it's going to be somewhere in the middle, and it says that the number on it is how many you have to put it down on a cooldown dice, which is a 3. So this blue dice I've put on there, set to 3, is a cooldown dice. And at the start of my next hero phase, I'll dial it down. And then at the start of the next one after that, I dial it down. When I remove the dice, I can use the skill again. But until then, I can't. So at the moment, what Red Mist is allowing me to do is add +2 damage to any combat attacks that get through. So this cultist ordinarily has 6 health. In solo, he has 5. So I've got 2 successes there. Now, we're in the darkness, so I need at least one of those successes to come up again, I'm hoping. And I've done it. They've both come up again. And I add 2 to that, which is 4, which leaves that cultist with just 1 health. So I'm going to try and batter him again, because if I can get rid of him, that's the most potent of the 2 threats dealt with. So we can see I've got 3 successes this time. So if one of those gets through, I will have taken out the cultist. He'll be dead, and I'll collect a soul. And I did get the 1, so the cultist has been slain. So we'll remove him from play, and I will collect a soul. Also, currently, we've contracted in the soul tokens from Dark Souls, so they are extras in the game. So I've got 1 soul. I've used up my combat, so we're now ending the hero phase, because I've banked my remaining cube. And so now the enemy phase begins, where I would activate the furthest enemy away from me. Obviously, there's just the 1 enemy in play. And he would ordinarily shuffle towards me 1 zone and then make his attack. But he doesn't move towards me, he's already in my zone. So he makes his attack using 2 dice. He's looking for successes, just the same as players are. And when he gets them, he'd do 1 damage for the success, but also 1 stun, which I'll explain if he gets it. He didn't get it, he's rolled 2 interacts, so he's missed me, which is perfect for me. And that will end the round. We go into round 2. So at the start of round 2, I'm going to dial down my Red Mist, and I'll roll my dice, but I roll 5 instead of 6 because I banked an interact. So I'll move the banked interact across, and you can see this turn I've been a little bit less fortunate because I've got 3 enemy activations. Now, if you're in a game where you think to yourself, that's just going to put me in so much trouble, you could forfeit your turn to just activate 1 enemy. I'm going to see how things go though. So we'll activate him, but he's going to get 3 attacks at me. So his first attack that comes in misses. His second attack that comes in misses. So that is 2 misses. So I've been extremely fortunate there. The third attack does hit me, so I'm going to lose 1 health, and then I've got to lose 1 cube because of the stun. If there were no cubes left, I would set one aside so that I remember to remove a cube from my next activation. Right, so I've got 2 interacts, and that's far from ideal. You can see how you could go, well, that might not be worth doing. You just let him have his attack, then go into the enemy phase. He would attack you again, and then go again. But instead, I've given him 3 attacks at me. And I suppose you'd look at that and think, well, maybe I'd take 3 or 4 damage off of him, but I've only taken 1, so I feel like I probably made a good choice. I could have used my tarnished shield there to have made sure I took no damage, but I'm going to try and hang on to that for a bit and hope I don't get it destroyed when I've got a potion of healing and the sprig of acacia still to spare. I'd like to hang on to the shield because things are going to get much more dangerous later on in the game, I would imagine. So I'm going to use an interact now, and I will step to the right and not do the time warp again. We're going to draw a tile, and I'll pop that there to the right. I'm going to put the berserker into the zone, and this zone is the tomb. However, the lever is going to go there and in the place of the tomb, and that is from another game, I'm sure, but it's if I interact with that lever, I can open up the door in advance so that when I find it, it's already open, as opposed to having to batter my way through it or find the lever later. But I have entered a new zone, so I've got to make a roll, and you can see that I've got a Triskelion and a combat result. I'm going to re-roll the combat result in the hopes of not putting an enemy in, but now I've got a trap, and I can't re-roll the trap, so that might not have been the wisest decision. But the Triskelion result means that I've found a treasure chest in this zone, which could be quite useful. My final interact then, I'm going to try and avoid that trap. If I get 3 successes, I've avoided the trap. And I have got 2 successes, so unfortunately I've triggered the trap. So we'll see what happens to me now. It's a firebomb. You stand on a pressure plate and you hear a click. A hidden firebomb detonates. Damage 4 to all in the zone. Roll dice equal to your metal. Okay, so I have got 6 metal, and I have got just 1 success out of the 6 dice. I can reduce damage by 1 for each success. So I'm going to take 3 damage, which puts me on 4 health. Now, that's not a very pleasant way of finishing the hero phase, but that's how it's gone. So now the shambling corpse is going to get activated in the enemy phase. He's going to walk into the zone and he's going to make his attack. I'm going to let him do that. We'll see what happens. He's missed me, and that ends that round. So we're going into round 3. Now, round 3 is a trigger round, so at the end of that, I get a random effect that kicks in. In the meantime, let's see what I've generated. I've got 2 combat results there. I've got 2 Triskelions. I've got 1 interact, but I've also got 1 enemy activation. So at the start of my round, I've got to clear that enemy activation. So I've got to take an attack from the shambling corpse. He's going to attack me with 2 dice, as he did before. This time I've taken another wound, and I've got to lose a dice. I'll lose a Triskelion because of stun, which is what that delivers as well. Should definitely be using my shield here. So now I am going to dial down my red mist, but I'm also going to show you the other skill. But I think I will search the zone first, just in case I find something useful. So I'll interact first of all. Search the zone for treasure, which I have succeeded in doing. So I'll put in the search token and I'll collect a treasure card. This time I have found a small pouch. That small pouch contains 20 gold coins, so I'll collect the 20 gold coins. In fact, I'll keep that card there just to show what that was. Now, I have got 2 combats and a class skill left, or a Triskelion roll. So I'm going to use that Triskelion to activate Mighty Blow because it costs the Triskelion to use. And then That's also got a cooldown of 3, so I've put the cooldown dice on there. I'm then going to make a combat attack. Now, my mighty blow means I'll add +4 to the damage. These fellas are pretty tough, and they do have 5 health. Now, I've got 3 hits there, but we're in the dark, so I've got to re-roll these 3 hits. And if I get one of them through, I'll add 4, and that will be 5, which will take him out of the game. And as you can see, I've done exactly that. So he's defeated, and I gain another soul. And that was a good use of that. Now I'll bank the combat to end the round, and we've got I did explore and I did kill an enemy, so I don't make a dice roll for having no enemies in play, but I do have to make 1 dice roll for the end of round 3, which is one of the trigger events, so we'll see what happens with that. So I've got combat, and a combat means I've got to spawn a skeleton in the zone. So a geist-bound skeleton has basically walked into that zone, and he's come in at the end of the enemy phase, which is fortunate for me because it means I won't be activating him. He's not going to come in and hit me straight away. But at the same time, I thought I had a fair bit of control over the dungeon, and apparently not so much. So we go into round 4. And I'll be moving this cube now across back into the combat. I'm going to take out that cooldown dice, and I'll dial down my mighty blow. Then I've got to roll 5 dice to generate the rest of my activation cubes for this round. There's a lot of interact there. 1 enemy. So we're going to see what the Geist-bound warrior is going to do. So he acts differently to the Shambly Corpse, as you'd expect. He rolls 3 dice. Now he would ordinarily move 1 towards the most healthy hero in play. And when he arrives, he's going to be attacking. Now, in this instance, he doesn't have to move at all. But if he did have to move, and say I was in this zone here, he would move 1, 2, preserving the combat result for when he arrives, so he can still use it to attack me. You wouldn't, for example, be able to use that, then that, to move him to you, and then him not actually be able to attack. So, in this instance, he will get 1 attack against me, which is 2 dice, and I'm not going to use the shield. He's missed me, so that was a good call anyway. And now I can clear the enemy because he's had his activation. So what I'm going to do now is spend an interact. I'm going to pull that lever before I forget. Then I am going to try to break into the chest, which will be another interact. And this is going to be like it's a might test, and I need 3 successes. I've got 6 in might. So far from the easiest thing to pull off, but I might be able to do it. Just the 2 successes. So I didn't get into the chest this round. Right. I'll have 1 more go at that. No. So now I'm going to try and hit the skeleton, hoping for a lucky hit. I'm not going to use red mist, though it is available to me. Or am I? Am I? Yes, I am. I am going to use red mist. So we're going to put in the cooldown on that and hope that I get a hit. Oh, I've only got with 1. And it is a miss, so that's unfortunate. So I am now going to bank that. Bank the interact. I have 1 more go at the chest. I'll have another go at the chest, which this time I have got into the chest with 3 successes. So I'm going to put that on its side and roll a dice and consult with the chart to see what I've found. So I've opened up the treasure chest. I've made my dice roll and I've found a potion. So I'll then draw a card from the potions deck, and I've got a potion of courage. So with a potion of courage, when I drink this, I roll a hand of dice, and for each success I can regain 1 metal. and I can roll a cooldown dice. And then during the rest of that round, if I have to do a metal test, the result of the cooldown dice is the number of successes that I will score in addition to those that I rolled when I make the test. And I will rotate down the cooldown dice at the end of the game round, so I'd have to leave it on the potion. And when it goes down to 0 and I remove the dice, the potion of courage is expended. So that could last quite a while and be really, really useful in this game, because the cultists have got a spell called Cause Fear, which prompts metal tests, and it gets cast at you fairly frequently, and if you fail it, you take stun. So that's a great potion to have drawn. But that's my final interact spent, and the end of the hero phase. So I have to activate the skeleton again. So the Geistbound warrior has missed me on all 3 dice, which is particularly fortuitous. So that will be the end of the enemy phase, and we'll go into round 5. So at round 5 we're going to dial down the mighty blow, which I may or may not have forgotten to do at the start of the last round, but it doesn't really matter. It could be vital. We are generating activation cubes for the round, and we've got 3 combat there, 2 Triskelions, and 1 interact. Okay. So I feel a lot like pushing on, but I really feel like I also really want to hit this guy and take him out. But it's going to be very, very awkward. He's normally got 4 health. He's got 3 in the solo game. But I'm going to leave him behind, and I'm going to spend a class result to move to the right. And I'm looking now for the doorway, because I know that when I find the doorway to the next level, it's already open, so I can just get off of this level straight into level 2, knowing I've got most of my resources. Obviously my health's taken a bit of an impact, but quite a lot of damage anyway. I'm down from 8 to 3 on health, but everything else is still at full, and I do still have the potion of healing and the sprig of acacia, so that's fairly good state of play going into level 2 if I can get there, but we'll see what I draw. Well, it's funny that I came out of that preamble actually, because I have actually just found the doorway. So instead of putting in the double door, I'm going to put in the arch to show that the door is already open. I'm going to put the berserker in the zone and generate the zone, which is going to be another enemy, a trap and a cultist. So I'm going to re-roll the cultist because I don't fancy the cultist there. Now I've got 2 traps, and that might well be worse than a cultist, who I could have just run past. So once you guys have got this game, you can look back at this and see what an absolute muppet I am when I play. But I like to I like to take risks. I was hoping to get another chest. You just never know, do you? Right, so I'm in the zone, and I could use an interact to search the zone for treasure. And in fact, I will do just that very thing. But I'm going to have to flip both traps. So we'll start with the first one and see what happens. I'm not going to look for it. Berserker's generally not that good at finding them anyway, so we'll see what happens. Unfortunately, I've got a falling block trap, so I've got to put the rubble token in the zone. And now, whenever I move out of that zone, it's going to cost me 2 cubes instead of 1. All heroes in the zone are going to test 3 or take 3 damage. That will put me down into Twilight, and I'll have to burn my acacia. So that's pretty rough. Yep, I'm going to have to do just that. I've got 2 successes. So I take my 3 damage, and I got hit by that block trap, which was somewhat unfortunate. And we'll see what the other trap is, because I've set that off too. That one's a dud. Something clicks but nothing happens, and if the trap was ever present, it is in disrepair and no longer posing a threat, which is just as well. Now I've got to burn my sprig of acacia, which is a shame, but that now means that I am. It's in solo. It's a once per game item, and it gives you a full resurrection. So I get my 8 health. And now I can carry on. I can search the zone with my interact, which is what I was going to do. And there's the successes that I needed to avoid that falling block trap. But instead, I've got them to search the zone. So, we'll see what I found. Amidst the ancient bones and detritus, I have discovered 10 gold coins. So I'll pop that over there as well. So I've now got 30 gold for between the game sessions. I can go off, I can go to a town and purchase a few things that will be useful in dungeons. In the aftermath of setting off those traps, I think I'm going to exit the level, which is going to cost me a couple of cubes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bank 2 of the combats, and then I'm going to spend these 2 cubes here to get out of the zone because of the rubble token, pass through the door and enter level 2 of the dungeon. So we reset the dungeon. Let's remove the traps and the lever, the doorway and the other bits and bobs. Leave the skeleton behind, wondering where I ran to. If he wonders anything at all. He is actually mine to Sundead, so he probably isn't really thinking that much. Okay, so when I exit the level, that ends the round, which was why I banked those cubes anyway, because I thought I'll use those, but not right away. So we'll now be starting round 6, and for round 6, it's another trigger round, which means at the end of the round I've got another random roll to make. And at the start of this round, I've got to generate my activation dice. I've got 2 in combat already, so we'll see what they're joined by. They're joined by 2 interacts, another combat, and an enemy activation. There are none in play, so we'll clear that straight away. We're going to spend an interact to search the zone. 2 successes needed, if you remember, and I've certainly got the 2, so I can put search token in the first zone here, and I have found an old locket that's worth 15 gold, so I'll just put that together there, and let's see if I can find the correct coinage for that. In fact, I'll just trade up the 10 for a 25. So it's all useful later, but for now it's not going to help me defeat this cult. I'm now going to move into the dungeon a little bit. We'll see how I do. I'm going to go straight ahead. I'll do that with 1 combat, which leaves me with an interact, which I might be able to use in the next zone. So we'll see what I get. Again, I'm looking for a lever to open up the doorway, or the doorway itself. And I've again drawn a T-junction. I'm going to do exactly what I did last round. I'm going to put that in there on level 1. I'm going to do it on level 2 as well. So we generate the zone, which is, I'll definitely be keeping that one. And that's an enemy. I could re-roll that. Might get a trap. Might get a cultist. I'm gonna keep it. So we'll see what happens. And that's a shambling corpse. So we put in the shambling corpse. We'll put in the treasure chest. Now remember, I'm still in the dock, so this is by no means an enemy that I can just ignore. I think at the start of the round I didn't dial down, so the red mist and the mighty blow should be like they are now, as opposed to where they were. So I've got mighty blow available. I don't have a class skill to use it, so at the moment, if I attack the shambling corpse, I'll just be using my combats unadjusted. So he'll be hard to shift with that. He's got 6 health normally. He's got 5 in solo. So that to me is possibly a bridge too far. But we shall see. I reckon that I'm going to just use the interact first of all to see if I search the zone, see if I turn up anything, which is a success. So I'll put another search token in, draw a treasure card, and I am finding all the gold coins. I can tell you that. I have found a pouch containing 25 gold coins. The age of the coins in the pouch suggests their former owner won't have need of them anymore. So we'll put in 25 more. I think this is the richest I've ever been in a game of Bane. Which should tell you something. I've got 70 gold there. Right, so with my combats, I am going to attack him despite my being in the dark and it being unlikely I'm going to do a lot, but we can see. Yeah, that's not so good, is it? Look at that, 4 Triskelions. Okay, so that's nothing with the first attack. Oh! And yeah, 5 interacts. I don't know what I'm doing, trying to hug him to death or something, but that's not working. So that is the end of the hero phase. So the Shambling Corpse would ordinarily take 1 step towards me and then try and batter me. I'm going to use my shield now, just in case, because I want to hang on to my health, get through this level. I've used up the Sprig of Acacia. I don't want to take too many risks. I've got to get to these cultists and get at them. Okay, so he's hit me, but he hasn't rolled an enemy result, which means I can block that with my shield, and I don't lose the shield. Right. With that being the case, I will... Oh, it's the end of the round, actually. So I'm out of cubes and items. Okay, so we're on round 7, and just before we go into round 7, I do have to roll the round trigger. I've got an interact. Ah, see, now that's that would reset the traps. Many of the traps that you see me flipping, if you reset them, you flip them back, and you have to draw a new card to become active again. Some of the other ones are permanent traps; they stay in play, and they'll just immediately trigger again. So like that would like this the swinging blade trap does that, and the fire trap does that. So if you're caught in the zone and you get that happen, it will just immediately attack you. Which is brutal because those are really dangerous traps. But we're right at the start of the level, we've got no traps in play, so that one doesn't give me any negative consequences whatsoever. I'm going to start round 7, and I'll remove that cooldown off of Red Mist. I've got all my abilities back and all my skills ready, and I've generated 3 combat results. I've got 2 Triskelions and an Interact, which is a nice set. So I'm going to start out then by having a go at that chest, because if I can get into that chest, I might find something useful, might help me take out this Shambling Corpse. So we'll have a go at that. I got 2 successes, which isn't enough to get it through there. So now I'm going to try and hit him using Mighty Blow. So I'll put that cooldown back in on Mighty Blow, and I've spent the combat as well. So I've got 3 cubes left. I've got a Triskelion, which I'll probably use for movement, and I've got 2 more combats if this doesn't go well. I was looking for a bit better than that off the bat, but if this one success that I had there goes through, I will add 4 to the damage, and I will actually kill the Shambling Corpse. It does. So I've managed to kill the Shambling Corpse, which means that I can trade up and get I'm up for 3 souls now. When I get up to 5, I can buy another skill card, which will be really useful, especially if I get that before the climactic battle. So at the moment, I think I'm going to explore another zone with that class ability, because obviously if you don't explore at least one tile when there's no enemies in play at the end of a round, you can end up with an enemy breathing down your neck, or the possibility of open up and spawn gate, which is the case in this scenario. And if that happens, you could be spawning enemies every turn, which will get you off of a level pretty quickly, because if you hang around, you will be dead fast. So we'll see what I draw. I've found the gate. Now, obviously in this instance, the gate's closed. And I've got to generate for the zone what's in there, which is a trap and an enemy. I'm going to re-roll the trap. We'll call that an enemy, so that's 2 enemy results. So I'm going to put in whatever it tells me to put in. And have a look. So the Triskelion is a plague of rats. That's not good news. Okay, so we've got a plague of rats in there, and the Interact is a Geistbound skeleton. So that's the situation in the zone that I've gone into. Now, the plague of rats is dangerous If I get caught in there with them at the end of the round, they're going to do 4 damage to me straight off the bat with no means of getting away from that. So that's a bit of a problem. I'm going to have to be drawing spawn cards as well if I try and run away from them, because they'll chase after me on a serpent result. So I'm going to have to really try and whittle down the rats if I can, which means red misting, which is not what I wanted to do. But it's what I'm going to have to do. Right. Let's hope I get at least a hit on the rats out of these 2 attacks. So that's the first attack, which, as you can see there, has got me 2 successes. So I'm hoping that at least one of those comes up a success again. Yes, it did, which means I do 3 damage and the rat's down to 1. Now, because the rats are down to 1, at the end of the round they now only do 1 damage to me. So that's a lot better. I'm still going to try to hit them again, despite the presence of the skeleton, because if the Geistbound skeleton hits me, I'm going to use the shield to defend. So I've got 1 hit, and I really need that to come up again just to get rid of these rats. Yes, it did. That was lucky. Okay, so the rats have been splattered all over the place. And I've been just grabbing them from wherever I can find them and just ripping them to shreds, or possibly noshing on them if I'm hungry. I am a berserker after all kinds of crazy things go on in his head. Okay, so I've still got a combat. Have I still got a combat now? I think that was my last combat. I think I've made a mistake then. Didn't take the cube out before I made that attack roll. So it is now the enemy phase, which means that the Geistbound warrior is going to attack me. Now, he rolls his 3 dice, and he's just generated movement. He's got no combats. So he's wandering around in the dark, and he hasn't found me. So that was very fortunate. So we go into round 8, and I'll activate my cubes. So you can see there that I've got an enemy activation, which means that my friend, the Geistbound warrior, is going to get another go. So maybe he'll find me this time. But obviously, keep your fingers crossed and hope he doesn't. Oh, that is the 6. Yeah. Lots of cubes kicking around. Right. So I've got 1 combat, 4 interacts, and an enemy activation. So we'll get the enemy activation out of the way at the start of round 8. I've got to dial down both of my skills, which we used on the last round. And he's now going to roll 3 dice. He's got 3 enemies. You'd think that he should get some sort of a prize for that, but he doesn't. And just as well, I don't want him having a prize for that. I'm now going to interact in this zone in a bid to search this zone for treasure. And I've only got 1 success. I'll have another go because I'm still trying to find a light source. And this time I've got 4 successes, so I have definitely got that one searched this time around. And we'll see what I found. I have found a discarded scroll case, and it holds a scroll. So I can draw a scroll from the scroll deck. Ordinarily, every scroll counts against the small items and the limit that you've got, which you can carry. But when you put them in the scroll case, it all counts as 1 small item. So you can have 5 scrolls in there, and normally that would be your limit for the small items. So it's a very useful card to draw. So we'll see what I get from the scroll deck. I have drawn a scroll of defence, which is really useful to have on hand there. Now, it costs an interact to read a scroll and use the magic from it. And this one, I've got to be at range 0 to the target. So if I was in a multiplayer game, I could cast it on someone else. I wouldn't, because I'm just not that generous. But when you do, the target will then have defence 1, which is how many you can shave off of, you protect yourself. It's how many defence you've got against incoming attacks. So if something do 3 damage, you do 2 instead. For a number of rounds equal to the roll of the cooldown dice. So if I cast it, what I do is I roll my cooldown dice, and I put my cooldown dice of a 3 onto the card, and then I'll remember to dial it down at the start of my hero phase. And for as long as it's there, I've got 1 defence. But I'm not going to use it just yet. I'll wait until until I get through this door here and confront the cultists. So it'll give me the best chance of surviving that fight, at least theoretically. So I've still got 2 interacts, and I could try and force my way through the door, which I think I'm going to do, because I've got 2 attempts at it, and I could then leave, and I can go straight into the graveyard. Now I've got there quite quickly, so the cult probably won't expect me. That's my theory. Right. So, this is a might test where I need 3 successes. Now, I have got 2 successes, so I failed that might test, which is a bit of a shame, I reckon. I'll have another go. I have kicked the door in, which is fantastic. So, I can replace that now with the open arch. And if I go through it, it will trigger the boss fight. And I might just do that because I feel like I'm ready. So let's see what happens as I take on the Death Cult and see if I can destroy their Monument of Skulls. I'll spend my combat to move through the door.